All right, welcome to this insight session. A little bit of housekeeping before we start. Remember, if you have the app, there is a survey at the end, so don't hesitate to put your comments and rate the session. That's going to help us, obviously, making it better. You're welcome to take pictures of the slides. You don't have to. You guys can have the slides after. You can download them, so don't worry about that. But you're welcome to take pictures of me if you want. All right, let's go. So I'm Francois. I'm Director of Product Management for some of the product and tools and apps of Spiceworks. And here is Ben, who's the engineering manager.
Hey guys.
For pretty much everything that you're going to see, almost everything that you're going to see. I'm the product management guy. He's the dev guys, and he owns the developers that do all this coding, obviously, and all that good stuff. Did you notice the pictures? He's kind of looking at me, and he seems kind of afraid of the hammer, huh?
Yeah, every day.
As he should be. All right, good. Let's go. All right, so this session is going to be about insight. Obviously, you've heard a lot about insight. Insight is, generally speaking, this data that helps you making decisions, whether it's about new technology you're planning to acquire or existing technology that you have. So we're going to talk about all that and see where you can find those insights. And so on. Those insights are obviously a lot about what you need to know to operate and manage the technology you have, but you see this year an increasing emphasis, I would say, on everything before you even own the technology. How do you research that technology? How do you budget it? How do you influence tech decisions? You need data to make decisions, right? You've seen the quote here. I didn't make that quote. I kind of stole it from the internet. You can find pretty much everything on the internet. If you're not using data to make decisions, you're flying blind. It doesn't mean that you have to use only data. There's also good evidence that your kind of guts and your feeling is also important. But having solid data to make decisions, influence decisions, convince people. I'm sure at some point you're going to have to convince decision makers, CFOs of the world, and these guys. What we call the buying committee. You may have heard that from this morning's keynote session. You're not the only one making decisions. Nobody is the only one nowadays. The buying committees go from 3 people to 8, 10 people, depending on the size of the company and the type of technology. So if you need to convince these people, well, you're probably going to have some good supporting data. Here's another flavor of the quote. What's really interesting with this one, with this meme, is that we didn't make it up. We found it on the internet. So look at the words, right? This awesome data-driven business insights, and you want to go with your gut. So business insights is exactly the terminology we use. So there's clearly a trend right now across this industry about giving you insights. We know researching technology is complicated, and it's going to be increasingly complex. You need the data. You need more data. You need better data to helping you make better decisions. So from an agenda standpoint, I'm going to give you a little bit of background. We'll skip that part rapidly. So obviously, we're going to talk about what kind of insights can help you research and select new technology. We're going to talk about what about budgeting and paying for it, right? Once you've researched and selected it, then you're going to have to budget. Maybe you can't buy it this year. Maybe you're going to have to buy it next year. How do you even know it's in the price range you can afford? All these questions, or at least a few of them, we're going to try to answer them and have discussions about them. And last but not least, okay, you've researched it, we've selected it, you've chosen vendors, you've spoken to those vendors, you've budgeted it, you deployed it, and then you're going to have to manage it. How can we help you doing that? That third piece is probably more familiar because historically Spiceworks has had quite a bit of products like help desk, inventory, monitoring, helping you managing your current technology. So we're not decreasing that piece. That piece is still very much here. You heard announcement this morning about new flavors of help desk and things of this nature. I think we're just emphasizing more the researching and budgeting aspects, and you'll see why in a few minutes. And we'll wrap up at the end of the session in about an hour. You'll see the feedback kind of logo and stamp here. It's going to be very interactive sessions. We have a lot to say about insights, but I think we have a lot to learn from you about insights. So please make that session interactive. Ask questions. I'm going to be asking you a lot of questions. Give me your best feeling and your best thinking about those questions, and that's, I think, the key to a successful session for everybody. All right. You'll see at the upper right corner, just to help you follow the structure of the presentation, research, budget, managing. Every slide, I'll remind you where we are in that flow, so you can kind of remember where we are in the overall flow. All right. So I keep saying the word insight. What does that mean, and what do we mean by that? So a little bit more details here. So those are again things I found on the internet, but I think they're very good at expressing what we want to say and how we think about insights. So first of all, insights are usually things that are not visible in plain sight. There are usually some amount of intelligence behind surfacing this information that is going to kind of make sense to you, and that's usually calculated from analytics out of data that we have collected. And God knows that we have a lot of data at Spiceworks, so a lot of what we do and a lot of the insights we're giving you are basically derived from all this data that we're collecting from probably all of you guys, from these just millions of people that land on the Spiceworks platform every day and every month and use our products. So we're trying to make sense of this data and extract something that's meaningful for you and give you that information, those insights, so you can make better decisions. And the second interesting piece in that quote is the concept of action. The idea is, what good is an insight if you read, it says, okay, cool, and you do nothing about it. You're not making decision, you're not transforming anything, you're not deciding to buy or deprecate something. Right? A good insight probably is actionable. That's the point we're making here. The next chart about that's something we found from Gartner. And what you can see, you see the data, kind of the raw data on the left-hand side, the blue thing. And then you have different types of analytics. And some analytics, like descriptive analytics, are actually telling you what's happening. They're not going very far in terms of bridging the gap between the data and the action, and the decision and the action, which is on the right-hand side. That's why you see this large green bar about the fact that there's still a big gap, right, from the insight to action. There's a lot that the human input is going to have to kind of do and produce. That's, you could say that's the least interesting type of insight, because it leaves a lot to you to fill the gap and come up to a meaningful action. Very often you'll think of those, the way I think of them anyway, is reports. When you look at when you think of reporting, what reports can do into a help desk system, into an inventory system, they're just telling you what is, and that doesn't necessarily, it is not necessarily very good at telling you what to do, which the last part of this chart describes. A prescriptive analytics, a prescriptive insight, is much better telling you, all right, based on what you have, and based on what we know, and better what we've seen similar companies like you do, we suggest you do this. So that's probably a much more kind of refined and maybe a more interesting kind of insight. And we are very much thinking about those two. And you'll see some examples of at least what we have in mind. They're not all necessarily present on the platform right now, but we're making some very good progress there. All right, I'm not going to bother you with that too much. You'll see at some point during this presentation kind of results of survey we've conducted with many of people like you guys. And this slide is just telling you about what audience we surveyed. So if you look at the first chart, it tells you that the vast majority had a director, manager, or individual contributor, which is typically the audience we talk to. So no wonder these bars are higher. And the second one is the size of company that we've surveyed. Again, that's our typical audience. So you can see that from, if I read that right, between 50 and 99 and 100 and 249 and 250 to 500 are the typical sizes. Again, that is very much the signature of the Spiceworks audience, small and medium businesses, even though we have on the right-hand side a decent number of people in the 1,000 and more, not to be discounted, but obviously the majority is small and medium businesses. More interesting slide here before we start really, we're done with the background and we start talking about insights. We asked that question: in what ways are you personally involved in the, let's say, the life cycle of technology? From the time you see the bars from the left-hand side to the right-hand side, from the time you identify the need for a new technology, to the time you evaluate solutions and vendors and approve funds and make final decisions and approve the purchase and implement and manage the solution. You can see what the audience that we surveyed before how they responded to that question. And immediately you can see that you guys, I'll start by the right-hand side, are obviously very much involved in implementing and managing the solution, right? That's the pretty tall brown bar. And there's no surprise there. We know that the IT pros and the directors of IT are very much involved in managing, implementing and managing the solution that they purchased. If you look at the first two bars, it's telling you that, well, the same people are pretty much involved almost as much, if not more, in identifying the need and evaluating solutions and vendors. So when we say that it's important to give you insights to manage your IT, but also to help identify the need and evaluate solution, here is the kind of the living proof that that is the right strategy, because that's what you guys do. You're probably less involved in the money aspect of things, right? From the green to the blue, approving funds, making final decisions, and approving purchases. You're less involved, even though there are some, again, not to be discounted involvement here. All right, so we're pretty much done with the. There's one slide, sorry, on the background. So one more. So it's a little bit busy, but there's an easy way to read this. You see the buckets of insights we have asked questions about to this audience, and I'm ignoring the first one, but the next block of 4 is all the insights. You can read these questions on the left that are about researching future technology. In other words, we ask questions such as, how much do you value insights that would be about discovering similar, I'm reading the second line, or better alternative to technology you use? In other words, we would be able to tell you somehow, use that technology, maybe you would be better off using this technology instead. So we ask that kind of questions. Or comparisons between your business and businesses like yours about tech usage. You're in the manufacturing, small goods industry. We could tell you that people in the same kind of segment as yours use or don't use this kind of technology. How valuable would that be if we gave you that insight? Knowing the average cost paid by other businesses like yours for technology that you have or you plan to have. The fourth one being advice from expert peers on tech to invest in, best practice, and how to make the most of technology. The point here being that you would get advice through those insights that we would give you from expert peers that are facing the same problem and the same situations as yours. The point being that these 4, which are about researching future technology, you see the amount of blue. The bluer, the more critical these different insights were voted, if you will. And there's a fair amount of blue. The next one, the next block of 4, is about managing current technology. If you remember, that was the brown bar on the previous slide. So now this chart is telling us how critical having management type insights is. I'm not going to go through too much details, but if we are able to give you information about announcement of end of life, mergers and acquisitions, new integration, in other words, everything that affects the current technology that you have, and telling you, what this vendor just announced end of life for this technology that you have, how valuable is that for you as an insight, right? Do you need to be able to forecast what's going to happen? Maybe forecast the replacement because it's going to be end of life, or maybe test and evaluate the next replacement technology. How important is that insight? Abnormal patterns in performance of critical hardware in other words, is your current technology rendering the service it's supposed to render? Maintenance alerts, knowing that your warranty is going to expire, contracts are going to be expiring very soon, and you need to start thinking about renewing them, renegotiating the cost if it's a subscription, things of this nature. Long story short, the second block of 4, managing current technology, you can see there's a little bit more blue, it's a little bit more critical. And again, we're not surprised because we know very much that kind of need, because that's kind of what the history of Spiceworks has been about. But as you can see, everything related to researching future technology has a fair amount of blue, and that's definitely something we think we can help with. All right, this time I'm really done. Okay, so let's remember the little thingy at the upper right corner. Let's talk first about researching and selecting technology, and let's start talking about some of these insights. Some of these insights that you're going to see are today in production. Actually, you saw some of them from Marta this morning during the presentation in the keynote. Some of them are just ideas. Some of them we have actually live prototypes, and we're going to show them to you today. And again, that's the interactive part. We absolutely need to have your feedback on that, on those prototypes and technologies. Let's start with the first one. So Ben's going to help me demoing that one. I'll explain what that is, and then Ben's going to go through the demo. The idea here is if we were able to present you with this kind of information, and that's a live prototype, you're going to see it, but it's not anywhere on the platform right now. This is just work in progress. And if you are able to tell us, all right, I'm from this kind of industry, let's say manufacturing, and I have or planning to have a remote access technology that is, for example, TeamViewer. And as far as cloud storage, I have or planning to have Dropbox. And as far as hypervisor, I plan or planning to have Hyper-V and then GoToMeeting, right? If you were describing either your current tech stack or the tech stack you're thinking of, the tool could answer to you, could give you the following information. Which products are popular? I mean, maybe you're planning to acquire some of these products and could tell you they're popular or they're not popular, and they're popular or not in your industry. Or we could tell you this product is growing, as a growing market share, or it does not have a growing market share, right? Think about it this way. Remember you're influencing tech decisions. What if you're promoting a particular product to acquire and that product is losing market share pretty rapidly? Do you think it's a good thing? Do you think the buying committee in your company is going to see that as the right recommendation? Maybe there's a good reason. If it's declining, there's a good reason. That's really the technology you need. Maybe not. And product synergy, in other words, you're going to see that is if I acquire this product, well, is this product very popular and very well known to be working in conjunction with this other product? Maybe this pair of products is very popular, or maybe it's not. Maybe they have good synergies, adjacencies, compatibilities, call that like you want. But some products and technologies go well together, some don't. Maybe that's the kind of insight you want when you're going to make, again, recommendation for the tech stack of your company. Now I'm going to catch my breath.
Makes sense.
And you're going to make the magic happen.
Yeah. Well, it's actually really easy. We kind of wanted to go to you guys and see if we show you what's available in the drop-downs. Maybe someone who's feeling brave wants to kind of run through what their stack looks like. Could start us off in terms of your industry. Anybody? Manufacturing.
All right. Here we go. Right.
And then do you have anything for remote access?
Something you have or you plan to have or you're thinking of for remote access?
I say Microsoft Remote. Oh, that's all right. I'm sorry.
Remote desktop?
Remote desktop.
Sure, we'll do that one.
It's classic.
Office 365, you got that in there? Or OneDrive? There you go. Put the OneDrive.
OneDrive.
We have all that.
Okay.
We use Sexy Skype or Teams. You got that in there?
Skype or Teams.
Don't have it. Oh, what kind of place is this?
Come on.
You don't have... You don't have Microsoft Teams in there that replace
it's experimental.
Skype for
so
business?
Don't judge this by the accuracy and the completeness of the data. Judge this by the idea. Just pretend the data was really production grade and release grade. Is the concept sound? That's really the question here.
You could put that one, I guess, temporarily.
Go with temporarily.
I wouldn't suggest that one, but
okay.
We'll do Hyper-V. How about that? We're going
Hyper-V. All right.
Sure.
All right. Let's go.
All right.
So now we
ship
it
off.
Huh?
We ship it off and wait for it to come back. Usually takes about 20, 30 seconds for this.
20 seconds, basically. So that data, just so you know, the data, so this is really cranking through the data that we have. And that's data that's aggregated from millions of data points that we're collecting from inventory, help desk, interactions on the community, sentiment about product that people express in the community. Okay, so let's go through it kind of section by section. So the first one is remote access, and we could tell you Microsoft Remote Desktop is the 28th most popular in manufacturing, which has been found in 2.2% of the company. Okay, don't judge the validity of the number. Don't try to say, oh, is this right or not right? It looks right, it looks wrong. That's not true. It's supposed to be Again, it's experimental, it's actual data, but it's not the final release product. So don't gauge too much from that. The idea is just pretend the data was accurate in its final incarnation. It will be. And is that helpful to you? Does that tell you something? Does that help you make a decision? Remember what we said? Good insights are about making good decisions, actions, suggestions. All right, so Microsoft is the 20th most popular. The most popular is TeamViewer, which is found in 84.8% of the companies in manufacturing. Companies that have Microsoft OneDrive are 34% more likely to have Microsoft Remote Desktop. It's interesting. So 34% more likely to have Microsoft, that's the synergy piece. In other words, read it as companies that have Microsoft than people who don't have that, than the general population, if you will. The 34% is kind of a decent synergy. It means that there is a decent synergy between Microsoft OneDrive and Remote Desktop. If you had a number like 80%, these two products are kind of really, really compatible, and everybody's buying that pair of products. That's how you would read the numbers. 34% probably means that these accounts are Microsoft accounts because they use Microsoft OneDrive and they use Remote Desktop because they are kind of deep in the Microsoft stack. That's probably what the 34% shows. If you go to now the hypervisor, then all sections are going to be kind of structured the same way and tell you the same kind of information. You see that Hyper-V is the 4th most popular in manufacturing. Oracle VM VirtualBox seems to be more popular. Okay, okay. Okay. Don't judge the. If it was accurate, it would be released already. That's the learn here. It is probably.
Something to do with the GoToMeeting piece in there, which.
Right. That's not the. That's
maybe
not
that's
the
an indication as this goes out, you kind of want to be able to drill down a little further because if you're thinking, are you sure about this? Maybe I want to see some more details as I'm looking at individuals. Yeah.
There is also something that typically in the world of artificial intelligence, what we do, which is clearly not done here, is collecting feedback loop. In other words, usually these tools as how is accurate in your opinion, how is this information accurate in your opinion, and based on what people respond, we keep making the model better, we keep refining the data, and it's going to become week after week better than before. All right, I'm not going to go through everything in the interest of time. So what's your, unless you have a question on that, let's flip back to the slides. And, all right, so can you flip back to the slides?
Sure.
Yeah. All right, so is that helpful in general? What do you guys think? And I need for this section, guys, I should have had a be blunt, right? You need to be blunt. The best way to help us is to tell us what you think. Don't sugarcoat it. Don't embellish it.
Yeah, we got tissues up here if we're going to.
Yeah, exactly. We're big boys. We're not going to try, we promise.
Okay.
Okay, all right, that's a good one.
From my standpoint, I'm a small business. It would give me some insight into that might give me some insight into other products that I may not even have considered. Being that, I'm a one-guy shop with 250 users. And,
wow.
Actually, I have an assistant after 22 years just this year. But anyway, I don't have a whole lot of time to research everything out there. So something like this is very helpful in saying, hey, I wanted to use something besides Dropbox, but that's what everybody's using. The one I'm using isn't even something that anybody uses, so it's very helpful there.
Okay, all right, very good feedback. Thank you. Anything else, guys?
That's what I was thinking too, but I was also thinking, like, could you tie that in with the Spiceworks community so other members could say, like, well, you kind of opt into it maybe and say, well, here, I'm willing to offer my insight into that is why we use that product. And I don't know if you could link those two somehow.
That's a great idea. Yeah, we could absolutely do that. We don't do that in this prototype, but we could and should absolutely do that. That's a great one. Anything else, anyone?
So probably part of that answer too maybe is that you kind of want to know a little bit more detail about what the data sources are. Like you'd like to see that here. Okay, this is coming from here and here and here. Yeah. Okay.
Excellent.
The size of the companies that are providing that data are going to have a whole different concept than somebody that's got 800 users or 1,000.
Right.
That's something we hear constantly is the size. Saying you're in manufacturing, you could be a small shop in manufacturing or a huge manufacturing company. The needs are different, the context different, problems are different, We need to be very granular, we think. We need to be very granular and fine-grained in terms of the insights we provide. This may not be enough, which is what I think you're saying. And we've heard that story before.
You might throw up on where companies of this size use this product.
Yes,
This size.
exactly.
use this product.
That's a great input. Question over there?
How about the collection of data? How can you make sure that it is accurate information, what you're putting on the site?
Well, that's the whole point. I think the volume of information, the bigger volume, the more accurate it's going to be, the more feedback loop we're going to collect from people looking at this and saying, yeah, you know what, at least it's not the case for me, and here is what my tech stack looks like. Just please incorporate that into. Will contribute to the accuracy. And asking the question, I mean, the first reaction from this gentleman was very interesting. He says, you know what, that information, I don't believe it. I think it's wrong. I think that's not accurate. And we would collect that feedback, and the AI would do its job and keep cranking the numbers and refine the model week after week until it becomes really accurate. And says, you know what, it's exactly what I'm seeing in my environment. I trust this data. There's no magical answer to this question. That's one of the most difficult nut to crack, if you will. The opportunity we have is we have the volume. We have the volume of the data. We're not claiming we have all the final AI to be accurate all the time, 100% of the time, but that's what we're shooting for.
How many resources you have right now on the project?
We cannot answer that question.
Who's your AI provider? Is that Microsoft?
No. That's, we basically use AI product, and we have a team of what we call the data science team, and they're basically cranking the logic, and they use base software. I think there's something called the R software. I heard that name. I'm not the expert.
Yeah, it's like a research software.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's partially an answer to the same question, too, is that it's their responsibility to identify the amount of data it takes to be sort of statistically significant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you guys thought about maybe doing Amazon or AWS or somebody else? Everybody's got AI, right? Microsoft.
Sure, yeah. I saw Amazon was communicating on insights and things of that nature. The data science would be a good team to answer that question. I don't think we're the right guy, but that's an interesting input.
Just because it would be a vast amount of...
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Question over there?
Something that should be added that is basically the decision makers. Sometimes it's not IT. Could go all the way to the CFO saying price has a certain limit, so you have to decide based on that pricing. So
Exactly.
That's kind of missing.
Yep.
In there.
Okay, we're going to pricing in a minute. We'll get there. So just hold that thought. Okay, all right. Let's move on in the interest of time. Let me do a quick time check here. All right, we're halfway through. All right. So this one is the same kind of things. It gives you the same kind of information. The big difference is this one is live. It's in production. It's on what we call the topic pages. If you're familiar with the community, this is a topic page, but this is not a topic page, i.e. a discussion forum page, which is about fixing problems. The majority are what we call break fix. I mean, you guys are familiar. You're asking questions. You may be answering questions. But this one is a topic page, which is about selecting technology, depending on what question people ask. The nature of the question is different, so we have AI that can recognize those pages. They're not about break fix. They're about people obviously asking for a recommendation, right? I'm looking for a good AV antivirus with offline updates. And when we detect those kind of pages, you will notice that instead of putting an ad, there's no ad on this page, well, except the leaderboard at the top. But the big tower on the right is not there. And we're now, that's what Marla announced this morning, we're now surfacing these kind of widgets, these cards, which are telling you same kind of information, just different context and different level of detail. But Malwarebytes is the most popular antivirus anti-malware product, gaining popularity as a product in this category. Same question. What do you guys think? Is that helpful? Have you ever seen it? How do you think it should evolve? What's your guys' thoughts?
Again, this is good, but this is my opinion. My guess was Malwarebytes probably is very used because it's cheap, but you probably won't find that in a lot of people that have got 300 or 400 users using that. They'll be using something like WebRoot, or if they've got lots of lots of resources,
Yep.
Symantec, or one of those, so it'd be nice to say, this is most popular with users with so many
Yep.
clients or whatever.
Per industry, per size, more likely. Yeah, same point as you made before. Yeah, I would agree that that could be improved in this direction. Absolutely. All right. Any other comment to offer or question? All right. So size and industry granularity is the winner on this one. All right. Okay, let's move now. You see the little widget at the upper right corner. Let's move to budget and cost. So kind of back to your question a minute ago. So let's talk about the kind of insights we could provide related to budgeting and buying new technology. So before we start, I'd like to do a quick mini survey with you guys. Is how many of you are involved in recurring budgeting and forecasting? In other words, how are you quarterly, yearly, whatever the cycle, it doesn't matter, but are you involved in, I don't know, recommending, telling the buying committee, I think we should, set aside this amount of money for whatever. So raise your hand if you're regularly involved in this kind of activity. All right, so we're talking about 2/3, 3/4, easy. Okay, all right, very good. Thank you. So when you are involved in that kind of activity, again, budgeting and forecasting, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the least painful and 10 being, oh God, I'm going to have to do this again, I hate this. So raise your hand if you believe that this level of pain is less than 5. Okay, 1. If between 5 and 7, it's kind of a pain, it's not the end of the world, it's kind of a pain. Okay, 4, so 1, 4. And if it's an 8 to 10, that's pretty clearly, it's about the same. Between 5, 7 and 8, 10, that's about the same. So it's about, raise again if you're 8 to 10. Okay, all right, thank you. Question 3. Okay, now dream big, right? Especially if you're in the 5 to 7 and especially 8 to 10, obviously. Dream big. Is there a tool, an idea, an insight that you would like to see and says, oh my God, this would really remove that pain that I'm experiencing every quarter? Have you guys ever had an idea of your ideal tool, your ideal piece of information, and where to find it?
In my case, why it's such a pain for me is I go through all that work and they ignore most of it. So what would really be nice is to be able to have some insight into, I'm a church. Churches with this much users, what is their annual budget for a particular product or a particular backup?
Interesting.
Or whatever. Because, they have the idea that at one time they told me they would let me spend $18 to get an assistant, $18 an hour for an assistant for IT, and then I could teach him how to do the network administration. They really thought that was possible.
Gotcha.
They thought they could get a contractor for $60 an hour.
Okay.
It would come whenever they needed them and not have them on a contract.
So what you're saying is if you had this kind of information, you could tell them, you see, your expectation is unrealistic
Exactly.
because that insight shows that.
I'm not just telling you it's wrong. Here's
Gotcha. All right. The credibility. The key word is the credibility of the input when you're trying to convince them being backed up by this insight. Excellent answer.
You ever tell them we could replace the pastor for like $12?
no.
All right.
It's probably per minute.
So there was a big study that Sophos did. It was a global survey study, showed all IT departments globally are undermanned, understaffed, and underfunded. So stuff that shows that kind of information would be helpful.
Okay.
Another thing that I'm just wrapping up is it's just an Excel spreadsheet of a 5-year budget forecast. So I know that my antivirus, I renewed it, first paid for it about 2 years ago, paid 5 years out. So I know in year 2023, I think it is, I got to renew my antivirus. 2022, I have to renew all of my Meraki.
Okay.
So if you can budget things out and you know when all of your renewals are coming,
Okay.
then that'll help you guys a lot.
All right.
Okay.
Anybody sticking the same thing from these two guys? Okay. We have.
Exactly what he said. You got to get your stuff laid out within a 5-year forecast. Agree with exactly what he said. You have to have your forecast, 5-year plan. Get the executives on board. It's painful to set it up, but I can do a very similar deal with him where every month I know what's renewing, when, and why. They know almost down to the dollar what it's going to cost per year. I do have the same thing that he said, which is I propose some ideas. They usually throw some on there and then reject most, but at least I know what I've got coming.
Gotcha.
And if it wasn't on the list, then we don't do it.
Okay.
Did you ever double the price because you knew they were going to cut it in half?
No, actually, they're very good. If I bring it in for what was roughly said, they're usually good for plus or minus, just because they're so used to it now. But I've been doing it for like 15 years with this.
Okay. Okay.
And,
Very good.
thank you.
Anybody else on this? Need data to back up my kind of credibility and show that what I'm telling you is backed up by market data, or kind of the budgeting tool, right? If you could help me budget what I'm going to have to spend next quarter, next year, right? So I'm hearing a yes here. I think I heard a yes here. Anybody else on that? Okay. All right. Very good. Dream tool, right? The automatic budget and forecasting tool. That's an interesting idea. All right. Let's go. All right, so this is, now we're going to expose our ideas. So thank you very much, first of all, for sharing your ideas and your thought. That was pretty informative. So here is one that we thought of, and there's actually a real prototype working behind it. I can't really see what that is, but Ben is going to unveil it and tell us what this is about.
Yeah, so you'll see across the bottom here, there's a couple different dashboards. I can see where my mouse is. Here it is. A couple of different dashboards. We'll look at each of those, but this one's specific to purchasing information. So like Francois said, this is a prototype. So we're actually pumping in real data from kind of Spiceworks partners to understand what purchasing sort of trends in the recent history looks like. And the goal here is to give you guys a sample of some real insights and really give you that power of Spiceworks' ability to be a little bit bigger, negotiate, and sort of have access to that data, and bring you guys out of reach insights about, again, what's the cost of one of these units of hardware, or a bulk purchase of this hardware across different channels. Let's look at, kind of start in the top left. So, for example, let's say you're using one of our products for inventory, and you've got the inventory of your network collected within the Spiceworks ecosystem. What we're doing here is pairing that with that purchase data, like I said, sort of from industry partners, and looking at, if I was going to buy 5 more of these laptops, or more of these switches, or whatever I need to be purchasing in the near-term future, what's the cost look like right now? Or what's the cost look like in the last quarter, the last 3 months, something like that. So that's what this breakdown is in the top left. This is kind of like the information that was available from my network. These are laptops that I currently own. And so what we might pump in, what Francois and I were discussing kind of beforehand, was what if we provided a list of hardware like this, and then looked at and were able to go out to either to industry partners or go out to purchase information that we had access to, and pair, I've got the G1, the G2, and then maybe we pump in, here's the pricing for G5, that's the latest hardware that HP offers, that's what they want to sell you right now, and then allow you to make comparisons of pricing between all of those models as you look into negotiating with whatever your partner is in the various channels. So let's quickly kind of go through and just look at what this product's called Power BI. It's a Microsoft product. It's available for free. And we've done a little bit of work to kind of sample and give you guys kind of a preview of what this could look like if we offered some of these reporting tools within Power BI to see, is that functional? Can you use Microsoft products? Those sorts of things. So if we click on, I wanted to do start with a bulk purchase here. So click on MacBook Pro. A single click will filter out the information for the other hardware and just give you a look at, I think this would be like a bulk purchase of, I don't know if I'm eyeballing that, that's probably 15 MacBook Pros or something on that order across those different channels. One of the things I wanted to ask is whether these channel names make sense. So that's what's over here on the right-hand side, this legend of channels. Does that kind of compute for you guys? Do you guys have access to more than one channel, or is it kind of limited?
So I see that government integrator up there.
No, but it could. I know you guys have special kind of rates. That's where you're going, right? The fact that you have special rates.
Well, I'm just trying to figure out what you're including in there. So you're talking about suppliers that would come to me, vendors that would come to me, right?
Well, that's part of the question here is like this is a sample data set. We kind of wanted to see, it sounds like what you need is a breakdown of what is available specifically for government.
Well, I was trying to figure out if you're talking about like me as the IT director at the government entity, or are you talking about people that would come to me as a vendor?
We're talking about you as a potential purchaser of this type of data, and we're trying to answer the question, what channel should you go through to buy this machine? Are there significant differences between channels? So if you look at whatever the color is, but maybe you could discover with this that if you go to an e-commerce website, you're going to pay way less than if you go through a large VAR or an OEM or retail kind of business. We don't have here the channel that would be specific to the government because you guys probably may have, I'm actually not sure about that, but thought it was your question. The fact that maybe if you have special channels to buy as a government, we have not incorporated them as sources, but the point is we could. Again, that's a prototype. We could. Again, the question we're trying to answer here is when you're in that phase where you're planning to buy something is what is a fair price for this technology? In other words, you're not going to be ripped off by the sales guy trying to sell you something way above market price. And B, if there are multiple channels available to buy the technology, which one is statistically right now the best one to go after?
You may consider this all in retail, but like we buy some of our stuff from Office Depot, not really. But some,
That's retail
but
probably.
they have two levels. They have a business
Okay.
pricing that's different than
Right.
their store retail
Interesting.
pricing.
Okay.
So I don't know whether you combine that into one or
Right now it's
put value added retail.
right. Probably right now it's combined, but it's a very good input. That if that makes a big difference, and I'm sure it does on the price, we should probably split them.
It can make as much as 15 to 18%.
Yeah, that's
Oh, wow.
significant. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else? Yes.
So the data you guys have in here is dependent on being supplied to you by your business partners, right? So like, how did you get the pricing for these HP laptops?
We have a partner that has this data, and we're
They supplied it to you?
yes. It's basically an aggregation of a bunch of purchases, actual purchases that have been made through these different channels.
So these are real straight prices.
Those are real. Yes, no, those are real. Again, prototype, there's a bunch of dark magic happening behind that. Don't be kind of too focused on the accuracy, same comment as before. Again, that's the concept that matters. Does this answer the right question for you? Could that influence your purchasing behavior? Does that make you save time? Do you feel confident that you're not going to be ripped off by a sales guy who's a little bit aggressive for that technology? Can you find this information on the web? I mean, one of the key questions is, do you consider it easy to find this information on the web, or on the contrary, do you struggle finding this information? And until you talk to a sales guy, you're kind of flying blind and you really don't know what you're going for, in which case this could really help you.
We got a question back here, or a comment maybe.
Well, I just wanted to comment on what you just said. We just recently went into something like that, gathering some information because we were thinking on changing our vendor. Because the CEO asked for that information. And it took 5 different vendors to be able to collect the information, dealing with government contracts and all this stuff. And it was a painful process. If something similar to this will make matters easier and viewable and easy representation for the CEO to see and make a decision. Oh yeah, this one is better, and let's go with this one instead of
Okay. Okay.
And this definitely
In your experience, was that related to hardware, like here, or software or services? Hardware. Okay. Because what we heard is hardware is usually easier because the hardware prices are kind of more, let's say, less volatile, right? And they're kind of not varying so much because there is the intangible price of the hardware. Software is much more difficult to kind of guesstimate. So that's why I'm actually surprised to say that even on hardware, it doesn't look that easy. And left aside software, yes, ma'am.
Well, with the hardware, like the G1 is a 4-year-old computer ready. I mean, all you can do is compare the ports, the date, you know, and the memory. But if you're going to move into something, you want to be in a G5. You don't want a G4. That's 8 months ago. So how often is this going to be updated?
We don't know yet, prototype, but what you're saying is the fact that the data is current or not, especially as far as pricing, because pricing can very rapidly makes a big difference in how you're going to read this data. That's what I'm hearing, and that's a great. Maybe we should filter it so any price which is older than 6 months, we just ignore it. We don't put it in the stats. You're not going to see it here.
As you think about the value of it, do you want daily pricing updates to feel confident, or is it okay if it's like this week, this month, or you know?
Most of the vendors will give you next month is,
Mm-hmm.
their fiscal year is their rollout. So if they're selling like the G4s, they're going to drop it $300 because they're rolling out a G5.
Right.
Gotcha. So we're talking almost monthly. I think it.
Well, printers are usually 6 months, and hardware is probably going every 8 months.
Okay. Interesting
Okay,
that
makes sense.
this yes.
Yeah, I know Susan make a comment on your hardware versus software.
Right.
I think the dynamic as a finance person goes much more so than price. It goes to subscription terms.
Yes.
So again, if you can buy a piece of equipment, a piece of hardware, it's simple enough. You either get the best price or you don't. But if you're entering into a 12 months or 18 month, 24 month subscription, I think that again, as a finance person, to me, my antenna goes up a lot higher on that.
Gotcha.
The risks are
Makes sense. Makes complete sense. Very good input. Yes.
I see a lot of when we're buying, because we're a church, we're not looking for inexpensive, we're looking for cheap. So I'm always looking, and one of the things I see a lot of now is a lot of these distributors and all have what's B stock or remanufactured. So you would need to indicate if this is all brand new or
Very good
point.
pricing included B stock or certified remanufactured. 'Cause
Very
that
good
makes a
point.
big difference.
That's awesome. Anybody in that camp as well? Nope. Okay. Yep.
Also, you have, some support contract, like we're a Dell shop, so, we order from Dell, most places, you have to factor in, what your support level you want to put onto it. Also, you gotta factor in, if, some companies want to lease their equipment.
Mhm. Yep. Absolutely. Great input.
So, I guess with that, would there be a way for, instead of data coming from your suppliers, could I input my stuff, run the report?
Yeah, that's a great one. Yeah, it's kind of the feedback loop, but kind of different.
Three vendors,
Yeah.
just throw that into report and,
Yes. Again, you have a gift for asking the question like 2 minutes before I have the slide, so we'll get to that in a minute because I have a slide on that. Yeah, you're psychic. Yeah, last one, and we need to move forward.
So mine's more around Power BI. Are you guys planning on trying to release this as a template? Or are you actually going to build a connector to, say, your tool set?
That's still being discussed. The way we would deliver that could be through the community, could be through the tools, could be through APIs. What do you think we should do?
Well, I've been using Power BI for like the last year as they've rolled out the free and the pro versions, and the tool sets that have connectors built into it make life a whole lot easier than the ones where you're exporting CSV files
Okay.
and then constantly reiterating that data through your visuals.
So you consider Power BI fairly complex in
If-
terms of trying to
If
do
you
this
don't
kind
have
of
a
things.
connector, I've had to go through with a bunch of product managers on how to do things in the systems
Gotcha.
that they're using, and the ones that don't have a connector, they a lot of times will give up using it because they don't want to do the re-imports. They just want to do like the scheduled refreshes, and if you
So-
don't have a connector, you can't do that. If you're not connecting to a database, you can't do that.
Right. So what I'm hearing is if we use this kind of tool for the, let's say, the visualization and the interactive part of it, there would have to be some kind of seamless integration behind the scenes so you don't have to jump through the hoops of exporting the data, importing it, refreshing it. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, one of the tools that Microsoft has for this is anybody can build a connector to Power BI if
Gotcha.
you're able to build your APIs,
Gotcha.
and then in that connector you can have your options.
Got it. All right. Let's move on. All right. Okay, so awesome feedback on this. Okay, so here's another. We're still in the budget, and it's the last example in the money section, so to speak. You heard Liz this morning saying 22% of budget is spent on refreshing all infrastructure. So what if? So now we're in the complete what if scenario. We are dreaming big. We have some ideas at least. And the idea was, what if we could start from your current hardware and software footprint? In other words, what if we knew what we have? what you have, what we kind of do if you run the inventory, for example. If not, you'll see another tool that we released recently, which we call the contract tool, which could be the base for this information. So let's pretend we knew what your current hardware and software footprint is, and we would give you help forecasting the next quarter or the year's expenditure. In other words, that's kind of the idea you came up with. What if we provided something which, from your current spending and infrastructure footprint, we were able to extrapolate and says, I think next quarter you should spend that, and the following quarter you should spend this, and let's say the next year, you're probably going to have to spend that at least, based on warranty expiration, based on subscription, based on what other businesses like you do, that kind of stuff. So that's really the idea here. And like I said, the starting point could be this, could be inventory as well, but this one is newer, so it's probably a more interesting conversation. If you read this, it's actually extremely simple in concept. We call it the contracts tool. It runs in the cloud, and it's extremely simple. What that tool does is you go and you self-report what you're using right now. Right now, it's not even fed by the inventory, but it could. And you're saying, all right, I have a contract that I call, S3 storage. The vendor is Amazon, and the product services, it's actually AWS S3 storage. And I have another one called accounting software, and I have the one called Office 365. You're kind of self-reporting what you have. You put a bunch of information, your own notes, your account number, the cost you're paying, the currency you're paying in, and the billing cycle. Is this an annual kind of maintenance renewal? Is this a monthly subscription? In other words, you're describing your current infrastructure and its cost through the contracts that you have. The value of configuring those contracts is, first of all, you finally have this kind of clean and updated list of all the contracts that you have. I'm sure you guys have dozens. You can't imagine how many we have. So having that clean list, you can share it. You see this little guy with the plus sign? You can share it with your CFO, with your fellow IT pros, with your accounting team, whatever. And last but not least, you can even be reminded. You see the end date, column number 4? Before the end date for that contract expires, we're going to send you an email like 30, 60 days, 90 days before, your choice. Say, hey, this contract expires in 30 days. Maybe you want to do something about it. You want to stop it because you don't want to pass the deadline because you hate this vendor with a passion. Or maybe you want to like it, you want to renew it, but you want to renegotiate the price because maybe you realize that you could have a better deal with these guys. So that's the value of this tool. Okay? I encourage you to try it. If you go to community.spiceworks.com/tools, you're going to see contract. Literally the only work you have to do is kind of put the information the first time and then just leave it there, share it, update it when something changes. So if we started from this and then from that we were able to answer questions like how much dollars should you plan next quarter, next year? If you tell us your amortization period is 3 years, well, if we know the age of the devices and the age of this contract, well, in 1 quarter, you should probably start planning for spending that much money in terms of renewing that. Maybe there is a product that you don't like. If you told us in notes, I don't like this product, I intend to replace it, we could start helping you budget for a replacement. Remember the previous tool? Because we would know that a good replacement would be product XYZ, and the average cost is that much. So we could prepare that work for you, just make your job easier, right? And prepare almost, so to speak, and shorten the amount of time, especially for you guys who said it's a 5 or 7 or it's an 8 or 10. A lot of pain, a lot of time, difficult to get those numbers, to get them accurate. What if a tool like this help you with this? What do you guys think?
Why not just put it into my own Excel spreadsheet? Done.
That's a very fair question. In the context of this, the idea would be that we can answer that question left aside the future tool, but this one, the one we have today, well, because it's if you want the reminder email to remember to renegotiate the contract, it's kind of difficult to do in Excel. I'm sure you can. This tool does it right now.
Just use Excel. I get reminders for my stuff every year.
Okay, all right. So
it
you.
all boils back to where I put all that in there and I manage that, and that's why mine's less than 5.
Okay. Fair feedback.
So I might go back to work and spit out a forecast for 5 years.
Okay.
Probably 5 ends.
Okay. Any other opinion on that, on the helpfulness of such a tool? Okay.
It's tough.
So that
It's
would,
gonna be the same if you put it here. So the question is, do you want it up in the cloud? What do I get from giving you this info?
what you get is, that's a very good question. What you get is your data is anonymized and it contributes to all the others. What you get is you're going to make the insight better.
You guys gonna be the thumb on AT&T? DS3?
That's a fair question. It's a fair question. It's a fair question.
Are there any talks about putting in your self-hosted help desk software?
For this, no, not yet. We're not even sure we're gonna. Well, we have this tool here. There is no thoughts about making this tool on-prem, and even less this future hypothetical tool. I mean, it doesn't even exist. This is just a few things on the slides. Any other feedback on the usefulness of a tool like this?
It's definitely useful. I mean, don't get me wrong. You put it in one spot. It can be managed by more than one person. You know, it's cool.
Okay.
It's just, you know.
Okay, just cool. Not phenomenal, just cool.
What my advantage would be, I could forward this over in budget time, so all my people, they could look at it, have, you know, I'm more apt to stay on top of it if it's an app than if I build a spreadsheet.
Sure. Well, that's the new thing, right? Like, you know, the spreadsheet was 15 years ago.
Exactly.
Fair enough. All right. Last comment on this before we move. This guy over there.
The idea of putting it there, like you were saying, is would be nice is to have a little bit more interactive. Say, okay, software with X, Y, Z, we're not happy with it, antivirus, something like that. Click on it, what's alternatives?
Very good. That's kind of what we meant by what product to replace, right? By what? That's, we could help with that question. Absolutely. Great point.
Would you allow fields so the user can add?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's definitely the idea behind these bullet points and this question mark. This is exactly the kind of ideas we have. So make it more interactive. Yeah, got it. Okay.
So you could add a custom field like, don't renew or cancel at this date. You know, that'd be nice to have a couple of user-added fields.
Very interesting. Okay. Yeah, like the notes, kind of the spirit of the notes, column number 5.
How many line items do you have? If you've got a spreadsheet right now, do you have 5 of these, 100 of these, 40? What's order of magnitude?
We're small, I'll probably have 25 different contracts.
Okay.
25.
All right. Let's move on. We're 3 minutes. Managing current technology. I'm going to skip this one in the interest of time. And we're going to go to, we're going to skip this, and we're going to go to this one. So what we're saying here is now we're in the current technology, right? Managing current technology. We're not talking about forecasting and getting prices for future stuff. We're talking about current technology. Reporting, if you remember at the very beginning, I presented reporting like one form of insight, a descriptive form of insights. That's what reporting is basically. And we've had, especially for the cloud versions of help desk at the bottom and inventory at the top, a lot of requests saying, I need better reporting. Okay, you have the data, got it, but I need to be able to report on it, to share it with people, to illustrate things, to back up my decisions or illustrate some decisions I'm making. So we've made some pretty good progress in terms of kind of back to the point this gentleman said a few minutes ago, where at least we've kind of strategically decided to not recreate reporting products. I mean, why would we reinvent the wheel? There are very good reporting products everywhere, like Power BI, Tableau, Crystal Report. There's plenty. We've chosen Power BI because there's a free option, and again, that's just a prototype. And what if we made it easy in one click to export your data, inventory at the top, help desk, tickets at the bottom, export this data, put it in a Power BI template or equivalent, and get reports that are informative, tell you something about your own IT, maybe help you make decisions about your own IT. So that's what Ben's going to show in a sec.
You ready now?
I've
you ready now?
I've never been more ready.
Okay, so I think we're supposed to be done like in a minute or so. We're going to do,
Let's do one.
I'll basically do these demos in our tool session with Francois and I. So if you're flipping through the schedule and you see our faces again, you'll get a chance to see a little bit more in depth.
Yeah.
So I showed this earlier. There's a couple of dashboards at the bottom here. Let's look at the help desk one gets a little bit more involved. Let's look at the inventory one. So this is a similar layout. We can do the similar kind of thing as I showed previously, kind of single-click filters. And so as you were mentioning there in the back, this is imported. So like Francois just showed, you go into the app, you click an export button, you pull a file out, and then what we'd like to do, the shortest term solution would be that we provide a way for you to take that exported file and do a simple import into like a template for Power BI that'll allow you to refresh your data without doing a lot of like dark magic kind of massaging of the data or reformatting the file or anything like that. We'd like to make it as simple as possible there. So what we've got here is a dump of kind of a sample inventory. So say I'm using the inventory online product. I've got all of my devices pulled in there. I use that export and I dump that in here to the template in Power BI. I can quickly run you through here. So I've got a couple widgets at the bottom. These are some sample things we came up with, sort of sample use cases. So if I want to identify devices that have not enough free drive space on their hard drives, I want to identify older devices that have a specific amount of RAM that's kind of too small for current workloads. It could even drill down into exactly how much is available on specific hardware and the number of memory slots, those sorts of things. So making some quick decisions there. And then over on the right, you've got vulnerable software version installed. So say you're able to identify, hey, I know there's just, we pulled Firefox and GoToMeeting, older versions of those, for example, but say you're able to pull those in, or say we're able to maybe make some of those decisions for you and identify older software and then populate that here for you in the template. It's quick and easy to make changes there to which software is identified for you. So then if you move up to the center here, we've got a breakdown of model age, so you can see across the x-axis here, there's a bunch of different pieces of hardware, and then we're breaking down for you how many of those do I have that are of a certain age and then that are older than a certain age, and that would be customizable as well in this template. And then moving off to the right, you've got a list of the operating systems. And so where this gets interesting, and say I want to identify devices that have a specific age, I can quickly see which operating systems are being run there, or if I clear that filter and specifically identify which are those Windows 7 devices that I have left. This list across the top, this table is going to provide all the information I might need if I was going to go identify what's that user, or which department are they in, or what building are they at, or whatever. So kind of the goal here, without getting into too much more detail, was I'm sure all of you have done this. You sort of go through this process of building these reports, and you mess around. Maybe you're in Excel, or you're messing around with a bunch of stuff, trying to come up with just getting the accurate information to allow me to ask the questions that I already know I need to be able to ask. What we wanted to do with something like Power BI is allow you to bypass all of that, just get all the data in there, and then allow you to quickly ask those questions, get answers, instead of spending all of your mental exertion just getting it in there and being able to ask the questions. And then like, I got to come back tomorrow. I'm excelled out today. So that's the idea here. So
That's a good one.
all right, we're a little over, I think.
Yeah,
You want to keep going?
we're going to stop. We have the same concept on help desk, but so let me ask you this: does that sound like a good direction for us to improve the amount of reporting and the type of reporting we do in the product? When you've seen kind of Ben click on one of these kind of bars or pie chart, and the list refreshing and basically telling you, all right. Actually, it's a pretty good example. Here is the list of machines that are still on Windows 7, which I'm going to have to upgrade before January of next year, right? Because out of support next year. Does that sound like a good direction for us to go to in terms of reporting?
Sure. Yeah, I think it's great.
Okay.
Was this not built into the local version, the desktop version you had before?
It is kind of. I mean, you have the same kind of functionality in the desktop one.
Yeah.
The thing is that if we need to recreate that into the cloud version of it, there's a lot of work, and strategically, I don't know if we've made the decision because we're still talking about it, but we're contemplating the idea of not redeveloping the same features, but using off-the-shelf product like this one, which have tremendous flexibility, tremendous features, and kind of focus more on the data, on the insight, and leave the visualization for the guys who are good at visualization. That's really the key question for us, and we want to feel whether or not that feels like a good direction to you guys.
That would be a smart direction. I do have one question. Are they going to invest again in the local desktop, or is it completely cloud?
It's right now the decision's pretty clear. We've announced it. This is still very much supported. It is not end of life. We're still distributing it. There's still many users adopting it every month. We're not adding features. They're very feature rich. It's a difficult code base to maintain for us. And we're much more efficient maintaining and improving this type of code base versus the desktop one. Any other input on this general direction of reporting?
Maybe one question on this one. So we've talked about Power BI. For you guys, I think there's a couple different options. Obviously, you've used Power BI in the past back there. Is Power BI kind of a top line item for you guys, or are you familiar? There's other options like Tableau. There's I think Crystal Reports is maybe another big one in the industry. Does anybody have a sense of which reporting software I would want to use if I was going to do this? I'm already familiar with it, that sort of thing. Or is it kind of greenfield for you guys?
For those that don't know, Power BI, like you guys mentioned, has a free version for anybody with a Microsoft account. And the only limitation that it has is that you can't publish reports. So you can build your own reports, you can print those reports, you just can't share those reports with other people.
So you can't share them. It's a paid option. You can publish them.
Well, so recently I went through a whole bunch. We're a Microsoft partner for the software company that I work for. So we actually, inside of our RUR rights, got a bunch of pro licenses, but those published reports did not show up
Okay.
until the person signed into their paid license or their pro
Maybe it's a
license.
trial
Okay.
limitation or
Yeah,
something.
we'll
maybe
double
something
check
like
that. That's a great input.
But,
Okay.
I mean, the free version by itself is like before I got the pro licenses and I had to share this stuff with people, I just printed out a PDF. The report in that was really good enough for sharing them. So I mean, if you guys can find a way to build that connector where you're surfacing that data right inside the website, kind of like Dynamics does, that would be great too.
Okay.
Or if it's just a connector where people can build their own visualizations, but you're feeding that data with their references.
Gotcha. Is there anybody that would not be okay with Power BI because you have your favorite one or you hate that one? Is anything but not Power BI? If you don't care, Power BI is as good as anything else, or you kind of like Power BI, that's fine. But who would not be okay with Power BI for this kind of use case?
They want to go with.
Okay. All right, guys. Thank you very much. It was awesome
Thanks, guys.
interactivity. Go to the app and answer the survey. Thank you very much, and have a good night. Enjoy the party
See you guys.
tonight.